Good evening and welcome again to another program on Globespan 24/7. I'm your host, Charles Sugrim, and this evening I want to welcome you to our program tonight. I would like to thank Nohar Singh for making this platform available to us and also for Devin, our technical specialist, for live streaming the program. Of course, we want to welcome all our viewers online on Facebook and on YouTube. I promise you tonight, you will have a very interesting discussion. As we speak tonight, the attorneys are preparing to present their arguments before the CCJ on Wednesday. We are anticipating that a final decision will be given by this weekend. We are also hoping that the ruling from the CCJ will pave the way for GCOM chair to make a final declaration on the winner of the March 2nd elections. In Guyana, we have made history in the Commonwealth. Nowhere in the 54-nation body has an election not declared its result that reflect the will of the people after 119 days. We made history when the regional officer for District 4 made 2 fraudulent declarations. Then the CEO made 3 declarations, 2 of which are fraudulent. It is interesting to note that the CEO is now saying that he's vindicated by the pronouncement of the New Jersey Attorney General. What he failed to mention is that the Independent Attorney General of New Jersey have brought charges against the fraudsters, which in our case is both the CEO and the RO. The question is, when will charges be brought against them? As one peruse social media, it breaks our heart to read and listen to the vitriol, the hatred, the obscenity, and everything that is dirty and nasty being peddled by both sides of the divide. There seems to be no end in sight to this madness. Or the question is there an end? I am glad that some of the prominent citizens are calling for a period of fasting and prayer in our country, and I hope all of you can join in that magnanimous gesture. It is good for healing and reconciliation. But at the same time, the rule of law must prevail. In today's letter to the press, we have an excellent piece written by Mike Persaud, where he states it is not about Lowingfield or Mingo or Claudette Singh. It has everything to do with the absence of the rule of law. Columnist Freddie Kissoon has been consistent with his writing in exposing the wrongs of our society. Christopher Ram has been consistent in bringing out the travesty of the past 119 days, and so does Lincoln Lewis, who argues the opposite. G.K. Lal seems to be on the middle ground, as so many others. Fellow Guyanese, Guyana as a nation state has been stretched to the limit. With the heated exchanges on both sides, maybe we may not be able to keep our country as one nation. We have been gripped with racial and class polarization before independence, and it's got worse since. I believe that those who expose hate and bitterness are deep down in their souls and in their heart, they are very decent people. For those of us, and I believe all of us, who live through discrimination and polarization do engender some form of resentment. Each one of us deal with discrimination in our own way, believing that if only I can get rid of this one or that one, my problem will end. I feel our pain and I do understand your concerns for your own self and that of your children's future. So where do we go from here? Our country is wounded and battered. We cannot blame foreigners for polarization and battering. We have created our own domestic political violence, Guyanese on Guyanese. We have no excuse to blame others. Our country is crying out for national healing. To help us navigate a possible new path for our country tonight, we are assisted by no stranger to us. Dr. Asha Kissoon is the first female presidential candidate to declare our presidency in the 2020 election. a medical doctor who cannot discriminate because of her profession. Her Hippocratic oath prevents her from discriminating. Dr. Kissoon, welcome to the program tonight.
Thank you.
For the first time in our program, I would like to welcome an extremely successful businessman. He's a CPA. He works in the DC area. He's also a professor in college. And this evening, it's my privilege and honor to welcome Mr. Floyd Haynes to our program. Mr. Haynes, welcome.
Thank you, Charles. Great to be here.
And last but by no means the least, a real fighter for free and fair election, a veteran politician who has traversed the world with other Guyanese, rubbing shoulders with very influential people, and has traversed Guyana as leader of the DLM, that is the Democratic Labor Movement. Now also a professor in the DC area. Mr. Tennassee, welcome to the program tonight.
Thank you very much.
Now, we desperately need a way forward after the CCJ ruling. Asha, as the youngest person on our panel tonight, tell our viewers what approach you would take to begin the healing process in our land.
All right, thank you very much. First of all, let me say that it's a pleasure to be here once again. As a young person and as a person on the ground, I'm here with the people every day at my clinic. I work at Sophia Health Center, which is one of the outcast areas in Guyana, as they call it. I can tell you from my personal experience that things on the ground are not well right now. People are suffering, people are jobless, people have a lot of needs that need to be met. Unfortunately, the incumbent moral compass is broken. I've looked at several videos over the past week of them going around on their trucks and listening to people that they have won. Going around and telling people that they don't need to help them with food supply, they don't need to give them anything, they just need to tell them the truth. When all that they're peddling is lies. First of all, on the way forward, we need to be telling our people the truth. Unfortunately, every time we speak out based on principles and what we have seen happening after the recount, we're accused of being part of the People's Progressive Party, and that's a reality. These days, like I've been saying, the world is divided into two parts, APNU and PPPC. All the supporters and going forward, the first thing they need to realize is that we did a national recount and it does not lie. We saw which party is in the lead, the People Progressive Party Civic. They need to accept and tell their supporters, honestly, that party has won the elections, the 2020 elections. In order to heal all these broken bonds, we need to start reaching out to the neighbors and let them know that, listen, when the elections are finished, we still need to work together. We still need to get up and help each other if anything happens. No politician is going to come to your house and help you. And I said this to some of my friends. While you're on the streets putting your life at danger right now and we have COVID-19, where are your leaders? They're not there with them. They're safe at home, taking all precautions and making sure that they don't get sick. So going forward, a message of unity, a message against all the racism that is spewing out of their mouths, because it has been happening. I'm right here. My personal experience, I'm here in Guyana, I'm a young person. If I walk on the street right now, you feel targeted. If you go to the market, you're not safe. You're looking over your shoulder. If you go to the supermarket or the health centers, people are not comfortable. And there's this tense environment. There's an environment of insecurity, an environment of unease, not knowing which direction our country is going in right now. So what I'm asking my people to do is to come together, to be patient, to not take the laws into their own hands. Because this is the talk that's going around. People want to take to the streets, they want to protest, they want to get the things done immediately. But I urge them to be patient. The CCJ ruling is on Wednesday, 2 days from now. And after that ruling, let the leaders sort it out. Don't take things into your own hands. The COVID-19 cases in Guyana are going up, and we need to continue taking all precautions. We cannot put our lives in danger for these leaders who are not standing there with us.
Thank you, Asha. Being a young medical doctor and seeing what is going on in Guyana, your words, I hope that they listen to you. I know Mike Persaud also wrote a nice letter. I think tomorrow they might publish it in the newspaper, when he's comparing what Nixon went through in the 70s to what President Greens is going through now. And maybe it needs some elder statesmen to tell our president that maybe it's time to pack up, because we cannot allow this to continue. Mr. Haynes, I read your letter in the newspaper in Kaieteur News. I have it here, I actually printed it out. A letter was published on June the 22nd, a moral obligation to uphold the truth. In that letter, you spoke about what you think should happen, what the coalition should do. If someone read that letter, they will think that you are a support of the PPP. What I've seen happening is that anyone who writes what they consider to be the truth, that person is deemed to be a supporter of the PPP. I'm glad you end the letter by saying that you are a longtime friend and support of the coalition. So it's not you're against them, it's that you're speaking your truth. Tonight, Mr. Floyd, tell our people, in your own words, what is the way forward? What approach would you take to begin the healing process in our land?
Well, thank you, Charles. I'm glad you asked. Let me first talk a little bit about my letter. I wrote that letter because I am committed to truth. I am not on one side or the other. Those who know me know that I have friends in both parties, in the leadership of both parties. I have supported the coalition for quite some time. I was an observer on the ground on election day. And after the elections, I took a back seat and I looked at what unfolded. And it appears to me that it was clear that the PPPC, the opposition, had won the elections. The initial count and the statement of polls supported that, and the recount supported that. Now, the government, or the APNU, the coalition, has asserted, made claims. There's some reverb. Is that on my end? Okay. Okay, great.
That's fine. Yeah.
Yes. So now the coalition government have asserted that there's fraud on the part of the PPP. And so we get into this whole thing. Well, both sides commit fraud, and where do we go from here? Now, there is a distinction between an allegation or a claim and evidence. Allegations and claims can be true or false. Evidence is that which corroborates the allegation, or it establishes the veracity of the allegation. But the allegation itself isn't the evidence. And so what I say to my friends in the coalition is, if you have evidence of fraud, present the evidence. I would be the first. I would take it to the capitals of the Western world. I would write 10 more letters. But I haven't seen the evidence. And in absence of that evidence, I chose to stand alone like the cheese in that nursery rhyme. I don't think the truth should be a casualty of partisan bias. I understand the concerns of the coalition government. Let me be clear. There is a legitimate fear of marginalization and domination by an Indian government amongst particularly poor blacks. That is a legitimate fear, and we cannot disregard it or wipe it under the rug. It exists. But that fear should not be used to justify a lie. We should not build, you cannot build something on a shaky foundation. That fear has to be addressed, and responsible leaders have to be able to take that fear and channel that fear into something productive. And that's why I wrote that letter. I wanted to be on the side. I think history will absolve me. History will prove that I stood on the side of truth when it mattered. And it takes courage to do that kind of thing. And that's why I wrote that letter.
Excellent, Floyd. So tell us what you think might be your approach to fostering a healing process.
Okay, so in order to get a healing process, we first have to get beyond where we are. There must be a declaration. After the declaration, well, let me say this: Guyana, there is a false notion that Guyana's problem is a binary problem, and that is there is a huge problem with Indians and blacks. Of course, race is a problem. It's the elephant in the room. I spoke about this in Washington, D.C. several months ago. But it isn't the only problem. I would submit that Guyana has a race problem. It has a gender problem. It has an age problem. It has a problem of diaspora versus local Guyanese. And so it is a multi-layered problem that requires a multi-pronged approach. So what I would suggest, and oh, by the way, part of the fear that those poor blacks have, it is legitimate because our current constitution imposes a winner-take-all model, so that if you win the election, you get everything. Although the government would have lost with about 40% or whatever the number is, it is a significant number. So to contemplate that you could represent 40% of the population and be out in the wilderness is a frightening proposition. And this is why some of my friends, David Haynes, whom I respect, this is why they take the stand that they do. I agree with them. Those fears are legitimate. I am concerned about it. I just think the approach to dealing with it should be different. So what would I do? I would have a winner declared, and then the combined opposition should come together, take all of that fear and that rage and all that stuff, and put it together and develop a plan. Develop a plan that would insist on certain tangible things, constitutional reform. In that constitutional reform, you should have issues that deals with equitable allocation of the nation's resources, equitable allocation of government contracts, equitable allocations of decision making, those types of things. I think if you have, and it requires the right kind of leadership, if you have the right kind of leadership that can organize the opposing forces, you can then hold the government accountable. You need the constitutional authority to do that, and therefore you need a constitutional change. But that's what we need. I am not on the power sharing bandwagon. I don't think you can just arbitrarily divide ministries. It strikes me as intellectually lazy to come up with those types of suggestions, or even to just say, well, we've got a race problem, Indian versus black. That too is intellectually lazy. It is a rather simple solution to a complex problem, and we need to move away from that. So I would declare a winner, organize the opposition, and hold the government accountable with meaningful plans and meaningful things that could be implemented.
Thank you, Floyd. Sahodras Balraj, on the screen, in your screen, you will see she said, Mr. Haynes, there are also legitimate fear on the poor Indian as well. So both sides, there are legitimate fear on the Africans and on the Indians. And that is a fear that we need to address frontally as well.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I acknowledge that. There is a legitimate fear on both sides. We have not moved this country forward, regardless of which government has been in power. Poor people have always been the victims. Their lot has not changed much. And that is something we need to address. And that's why I say there is a class problem. Even there is an inter-party and there is an intra-party problem. And that is defined by the class structure. Even within the structure. By the way, the fears are very different. There is a cross-contamination of fears. There is the fear on the part of the poor people that they'll be marginalized. And then there is a fear on the part of the political class that they will lose access, privilege, and those types of things. They're different fears, but they're often contaminated in these types of discussions, and they're always represented as one, but they're not, and we need to decouple that.
Excellently put. Paul, before I bring you on, I went through to get some clipping on your past, and Devin has a clip of you that you were in your youthful days, not now, when you were calling for racial unity in our country. Devin, let's play this clip before I bring in Mr. Tennassee.
Today is another day in another phase in an attempt to bring a new life to our people's struggle, our people's hope. Today, my brothers and sisters, was a march for unity and of unity. Today, my brothers and sisters, was a march for resistance and of resistance. Today was a march of hope, because again and again, as a multiracial people, we must always salute and always give credit to whatever attempt is made in whatever way to bring Indian and African, Chinese and Amerindian, Portuguese and all the ethnic groups of our nation together under one banner and one cause.
That was the youthful Paul Tennassee, full of hair, all this lovely beard and so on. Paul, tell our audience, what would you recommend an approach to be to begin the healing process? You heard from Asha and from Floyd. What is your take on this?
Well, I endorse a lot of what both our guests have said. And I do agree that we have to have some kind of a formative action on race, on class, on gender, and region. You know, I did a study for ActionAid International on poverty in Guyana in 2005. And coincidentally, the last person I interviewed was the president of Guyana when he was the head of the Guyana Review. I interviewed him. He was the last person in Guyana I interviewed in 2005. Now, a lot of the reasons why various ethnic groups have different perceptions of each other is because under British colonialism, there was an ideologue, Michael Swan, and the British developed stereotypes about the Indian, about the African, about the Chinese, the Portuguese, and the Amerindian. And believe it or not, today in Guyana, the Indians repeat the same stereotype, the Africans the same stereotype, and we have a problem there. We don't know each other. We don't know each other. So that's number one. Our history. We don't have a common narrative of our history. We have a serious problem with that. You know, many of our leaders in our country have not studied our history. I don't hear them talk about conquest and what it means, what slavery meant, what indentureship meant, what 20th century colonialism meant. You know, under the PNC dictatorship, and I tell you, I have studied thoroughly, probably a most significant part of my life, from 1953 to 1992. You know, upstairs I have documents, writing a book now. I really study these folks, the way they think, our history and all that. We need a common narrative. Now, what the PNC had developed was a victim concept of history. Look, no ethnic group in Guyana is responsible for conquest, slavery, and indentureship. That was British and Dutch colonialism. And yet, there are leaders who do that. And this is one of the problems we have. We have to work at several fronts. No regions. Now, there's a myth that the Indians are rich. Well, I tell Floyd, he's the Indian because he's rich. I'm not rich, and I'm Indian, so I'm black. Okay. So, you know, all Indians are not rich. In the study I did, what I discovered was that the poorest people live in the rural areas and the hinterland. The rural areas and the hinterland. Ask yourself, who are these people there? In the rural areas, they're predominantly Indos, and we have a significant percentage of Afros. And in the hinterland are the Amerindians. You know which region benefits most from all the resources of Guyana? Region 4. They have all the best schools, the best police station, the best hospital, all the government buildings, everything. And what they do in return for the bureaucrats who generate the wealth in the country, outside the country. So, you know, my thing is that we need a rethinking by the leadership of our country. And, you know, I want to compliment what Floyd said in many of his remarks about poor Afro-Guyanese. I worked a lot with the grassroots for nearly 10 years, all the time in the Ghana. I had a lot of following in Linden. I used to go up there, you know, I sleep on the floor and all that. I know that country well, from Blackbush to Silver Spring. And grassroots people feel that the middle class, since political independence, have been benefiting more, especially the middle class, political class. They're the ones that benefit. So we have a class problem there too. It's race, but it's also class. But behold, Guyana is in a situation where before our birth as a nation state, we were threatened by an implosion, and sometimes it did implode, of race conflict. And in post-independence, when we had the opportunity to address the issue, we did not address it as we should have. So this is still with us. Now, added to this now, our people are being threatened by COVID. Now, COVID is not a joke. COVID-19 is not a joke. It is more serious than the race issue in Guyana. It's more serious than the elections problems we are facing now. So we have two problems threatening us now, the COVID implosion and the ethnic implosion. And who is lighting a match? Who is lighting a match on this now? Mr. Harmon. I have not heard one statement by him that signals that he's a patriot, that he has empathy with the poor people of Guyana, who since December 2018 have been put in limbo in a country about the elections, about a no confidence motion, when all this could have been resolved last year by obeying the Constitution and in 3 months holding an election. Now I want to make another point. I spent the best part of my life fighting for free and fair elections. I'm not fighting for one political party or another political party or one ethnic group or not, because I'm a nationalist, I'm a Democrat, I'm anti-racist, a patriot. I want to see the poor people benefiting Guyana. That's my priority. That would be my main criteria for judging a government. What have you done for the poor? How have you transformed the country? How have you made us more viable? So in this respect, that is the kind of thinking that we need. And we, with Floyd, we have the Roraima Institute, and we had put out a statement prior to Floyd's letter in which we call for a table of patriotic governance, where we could convoke, and I don't want to see only the middle class in Region 4 in Georgetown being convoked to talk again and again about what they've been talking about. I'd like to see in the grassroots we have tables of governance. I would like to see in all those local governments, like on the quarantine, you have Ulverston, Alnis, and Salton, and then in another area, you might have Buxton, Luziknan, and Annandale pertaining to a village office. I want to see we start dealing from the grassroots on governance. And we have to deal with it there. And it has to be transformative. Now, I do not believe that Guyanese do not have ideas on how to develop Guyana economically. I think they have a lot of ideas, but I think we are not going to be able to do this in a dictatorship. I think a political dictatorship is not a framework for the development of any country, because at the source of the development of a country is people. And you cannot have human development if you suppress their thoughts, their right to move, their right to associate, their right to express themselves, their right to create, their right to seek opportunities and to develop themselves. You cannot have, you have that in a dictatorship. We did not come from kings and queens. My great paternal grandfather came on a boat in 1859 called Londonderry. And they went to Port Moran. He married my great-great-grandmother on a boat. Since 1859, they came with what on their back? Nothing. The slaves that were brought there, they didn't have nothing on their backs. The Amerindians were treated badly. Jasinski, for 10 years, found out that her daughters were enslaved. She was Amerindian, and for 10 years fought in the courts to get the freedom of our daughters. So all of us have been through this. Well, imagine what we have. Before 1966, there was not a nation state called Guyana. That's a creation of our ancestry. That is our people having created a brand new nation state in the middle of the Americas, full of wealth. We have everything in Guyana, as you pointed out before the program, millions of acres of cultivable land that we could use to develop food security. We have a Minister of Agriculture. I've been doing listening interviews. Nobody knows his name. Like Rip Van Winkle, the man went to sleep the day he was appointed, and he hasn't awakened as yet. Agriculture is the most important thing in the country. We have some serious, serious problems in Guyana industry. I want to make one last point. We have introduced something through the Roraima Institute called listening interviews. You have to listen. You have to listen to the people. You have to listen to each other. When I was in Guyana during the struggle free and fair election, I lived in North Annandale. In the middle was my house. On that side was the Afro-Guyanese, on this side the Indo-Guyanese. I sit on my veranda, they don't interact. They're polarized. And all across the road was Buxton. So I am saying we have to start listening to it. You know what a young person told me in one of the listening interviews? He's praying for the baby boomers to die because they're occupying all the power, the wealth, and the space, and the nice cars and everything in Guyana. Praying for the baby boomers to die. Now, that's the end of a country when you pray like that. We need intergenerational dialogue. We need to pass on the knowledge from one generation to another. What kind of society is that? Where are we at the highest rate of suicide? So, this election, the current leadership in the PNC are placing us in a situation where it seems to me from the statement they made yesterday is regardless, they intend to hold political office and re-establish a Bonamite political dictatorship that we had between 68 and 1999. Look at the facts. I just want to make this point very clearly why I take this position. Now, in the tabulation of the recount, the PPP had 233,336 votes. On the 13th of June, Mr. Lowenfield did an adjustment of 56,627 votes. On the 23rd, he multiplied that to 166,343 votes. Where did this man get these votes from? Which hat did he put his hand in and pull out? What is he, Mandrake? He's a magician? The April, so I want to tell you that the facts show me where these so-called valid votes that he speaks about, which is definitely that. And the last point I want to make. I fought hard across the world, and I launched a campaign at Tain in 1984, and in Barbados in May, we launched a campaign for verifiable, free, and fair election. I went all across the world, and campaigned for free and fair election. Right now, this is the first time in the history of Guyana that we have had what I call a geopolitical windfall for verifiable, free, and fair election. Everyone is supporting that we have our declaration based on the recount, and the PNC is totally isolated inside Guyana by people who are not PPP. Asha is not PPP. A lot of people in Guyana are for free democracy, not for PPP or PNC. If the PPP won, then we have to accept, look, I have never criticized the government between 1992 and 2015.
Paul, I know. I said when you can have the entire platform for the entire 2 hours and you will still have something to talk about. But you're well said. Someone mentioned the other day is that in 1992 we fought for free and fair election after 28 years. Now, coincidentally, in 2020, it's 28 years after 92. So we're now fighting again after another 28 years for a free and fair election. Your point is well said. The thing is, we need to recognize in Guyana that the Africans and the Indians, they have contributed significantly to our country's development. We must recognize it was the African slave who digged those canals in the sugar estate. And the Indians came and worked on those estates and continued to develop the sugar estate. And as you rightly said, it was the British and the Europeans who brought African slaves and the indentured laborers. They have left, and we are fighting each other. Edith Singh mentioned a great point in her comments. She makes some really great comments. She said, we need to move forward instead of keep regurgitating the past. And we don't seem to understand that if we keep talking about the past, we do not really enjoy the fruit of the future. Asha, Suriname had their elections after us. Today, their parliament met. They're moving on. St. Kitts had their election 2 weeks ago. The election is over. They're moving on. Trinidad will have theirs shortly, and they will move on. Why are we not moving on? Why is this as an indictment on us that we can't seem to move on and to develop our country for people's benefit? Tonight we want to talk about people's development, people's progress. Mr. Bob mentioned, talk about education. Mr. Tennassee mentioned about agriculture and so on. What do we have to do to move our country forward, and this politics should take a backstage?
Well, like I said from the beginning, we've called out to politicians, we've called out for good sense to prevail, and it seems as though no sense at all is there. There's a general lack of morality because numbers show clearly what it is. Logically, all opposition parties, all international observers, the international community, the private sector commission, local observers, everybody see what the facts are. And we still cannot come to a conclusion. I'd like to share a little bit of my experience. I've had the opportunity to be in 2 dictatorship countries. I was in Zimbabwe, well, next to Zimbabwe, when Mugabe had put out the white farmers who were there. And I was able to experience or be part of that experience that the people went through. They were crossing over the borders, going into Botswana, looking for whatever jobs they could get. They would clean your yard just for a meal. Mothers had children tied to their backs as they were working just to get by. My point is, I see Guyana going in the same direction. We're falling into a dictatorship because if you look at an example of what is happening at the Brazilian border, some of the cases we had recently are people that went over during the COVID crisis. They took that risk to go and come back simply because the economy, while the politics is in limbo, has also been falling. I've spent many years in Cuba, which is also a dictatorship, and I know what it is. They have their own system. But many of these supporters that are calling out and keep saying they don't care about sanctions and they don't care, let it come, they need to sit down and look around their houses and ask themselves, can I live without some of these things that I have? Guyana is not ready to face that. And they keep calling for it. Once again, I say we're also getting to a state of a dictatorship. Because if the people have spoken, the election has shown clearly what is happening. And no confidence motion was passed. And you choose to disregard all of that. What does it say about your morality and your principles? Because truth and facts have nothing to do with it. I am a presidential candidate of a party, but above all, the interest of the people is what matters to me. I am a doctor, yes. It shows that my life is dedicated to people and not for self-gain. Nothing I do in my clinic benefits me. It's only for the people I take care of. And the same way when I got into politics, I came with the notion that whatever I do has and must benefit the people of Guyana. I sit with them every day, and some of them come into clinic just to tell me what's happening in their homes. They're not sick at all. And the people are the ones that are feeling it right now. In order for us to move forward, we spoke of the issue of Afro-Guyanese feeling they will be left out, Indo-Guyanese feeling they will be left out. If we have community development that would benefit both sides of the chain, then nobody would feel left out. But unfortunately, because of the corruption, the people are left to feel like if my government is not in, we will be left out. And that's one of the problems I have. Let us approach this medically for 1 second. If there is a tumor, we need to take that tumor out, then do some chemotherapy. That is to say, extract the problem, and then healing can take place. We need them to stand out. That's the problem right now. Once we take them out, we get into that process of healing. We develop the people, community projects, equal scholarship opportunities, youth and development projects, and we start moving forward as a nation. But we need to remove the problem.
Excellently put, Asha. And having said that, I remember I was at DDL, I was the chief accountant there, and we had a staff meeting, a managers meeting with Komal Samru. He was the CEO, now he's the chairman. And he said the same thing what you just said there. He said, if a wall is cracked, you can do two things. You can take sand and cement and paste it up nicely and it'll be fine, but the wall is still cracking. Or you can dig the foundation, correct that problem in the foundation, and you have a wall standing for 100 years. That is so true. Floyd, Dr. Dan Paul Narayan, he got a very good point he's raising. He said, Mr. Harman said that conceding is out of the question. Where do we go from here?
Well, evil exists because good men remain silent. And I think it's time that people come forward. I have a lot of friends who took issue with me when I took a stand. I've seen lawyers in your program. Who would not take a case like this to court? They wouldn't. They would ask for the evidence. And what I'm saying, it is time that people step forward, produce whatever evidence they have, or concede, so that we can move forward. And all of the things we're talking about doing, none of it will happen, A, if we don't move forward, and B, if we don't fix the Constitution. That fear we keep coming back to. Asha talks about it, I talk about it, Paul talks about it. That fear is a direct result of a constitution that essentially crowns the winner as God. And so when you give anybody on earth that kind of power, if I am not part of it, if I feel left out, I'll be afraid. And so I think people have to raise their voices. Listen, when a man can be a law unto himself, I read Mr. Lowenfield says, essentially, I've got sole authority to do my thing. There's something wrong with that. You cannot build a country on that kind of thing. And so I think people have to come forward. I wish more people like myself would come forward and be critical. You've got to put country first. And I don't see that happening. And I fear the worst. I fear the worst. I don't see this ending well at all.
Thank you, Floyd. When we come back, I know Paul has a lot to say. When we come back, we want to talk about what Indira Skeet is saying. What is the solution? What is the way forward? And I hope we can make some suggestion. Whoever becomes the next president and lead our country for the next 5 years, they will listen to some of the views tonight, and hopefully they will implement it. So when we come back, let's talk about the way forward. Paul, and you will talk.
Flights are available to and from Guyana on Eastern Airlines from July 10th. Call Travelspan in New York, 718-845-0437. And in Guyana, call 227-1701. That's right, call Travelspan in New York, 718-845-0437. And in Guyana, 227-1701. And book your flights to and from Guyana on Eastern Airlines.
Having trouble finding a location to grow your business? We have the perfect space available for retails, offices, and apartments. We are located at 3A North Road between Wellington and Camp Street. Contact us today on 624-0692. That's 624-0692 for more information.
Okay, welcome back. Paul just took a break to be back shortly. Thank you, viewers, for staying with us. Dr. Kissoon, Mr. Floyd Haynes, and of course, Mr. Tennassee, he'll be back with us shortly. Ladies and gentlemen, before we went to break, there are a lot of concerns, and we're asking our viewers, post recommendation to us what you think should be the way forward. I'm sure you have a lot of ideas. You have brilliant ideas. And if we only put forward those ideas, we can all discuss it. And hopefully together, we can make a decision for our country. Before we start this program, we were talking about among ourselves that Guyana has, in the terms of land, we have about 83 million acres, 53 million acres of land, 83,000 square miles. 53 million acres of land, of course, we got to make sure we keep forest, land for forest protection, for watershed, for wildlife, and so on. So one of my recommendations, and we're discussing it here in New York, we have some of our guys here, Dr. Rose, we are putting some discussion together. We have Leland Roop Narayan, we have Dr. Dan Paul Narayan. We are meeting and we're going to discuss some of the issues we want to put forward to a new government. And I'm saying this, gentlemen and lady, our problem is we have a small pie. The cake is so small that we all fight for that small cake. And in fighting for that small cake, we kill each other, we trample each other, and then we start all this racial epithet and everything else we bring in, religion, race, class, everything we bring in. My solution to that is if we make the pie bigger, if we make the cake bigger, so more people can share in that cake, there is less animosity among ourselves. There is less feeling of ill will because you will be eating well, I will be eating well, our children will be fine, so there will be no need for this problem we have. So my recommendation, gentlemen and lady, is that why don't we look at a proposal individually? We might not have the resource to do it, but collectively, Guyanese around the world, there are Guyanese who are super rich, but every Guyanese around the world have $1,000, $2,000 US dollars that they can put into a development fund for Guyana, provided that is used for the development of our country, where we can use that resource to develop our country, create employment, so everyone will have a piece of the cake. What do you see, Asha? In your own words, what are some of the things we can do to bring the people together will come automatically once everyone is happy, that people have enough to eat and to drink and they can live a comfortable life. They have a security at home and so on, the basic human necessity. Once we have those things, people will work together. This political office will go to the back of all the human needs. Tell us what can we do in Guyana and what would you tell the new government that they should at least look at to move our country forward?
Well, I love the fact that you mentioned making a bigger cake and everybody gets enough. But in order to move forward, we need to teach the people how to bake that cake. And I feel that's the way forward. If everybody is afforded the opportunity and the skills to maintain themselves and to have a comfortable lifestyle, then we would be in the direction of having the best Guyana we ever had before. And to say to the new government that's coming, give everybody an equal opportunity. Let us deal with human development, because the human resource in Guyana is the most beneficial and the richest resource that we have right now. Guyanese people are intelligent people. Once we're able to foster this intelligence and build the people, the country automatically would also build.
Paul, you're a seasoned politician. tell us what can be done. What should a new government do to not necessarily to bring our people together, that will come, I said, automatically, but to make us free, to make people live a life, a reasonable, good life?
Well, my friend, I've never earned my living as a politician. I've always had to work. So I don't like the categorization, and right now, a pastor without a church is a politician without a political party. Anyhow, so I'm a patriot, I'm progressive, and dedicated a significant part of my life to free and fair election. Now, I don't want to jump your program, but I don't want to put the cart before the horse. My area is, for the last 30 years, both as a practitioner and as an academic, and an activist, and so forth, and a leader of a political and labor movement at various levels, the Caribbean, Latin America, and so forth, and Guyana. I focus on governance, geopolitics, and global politics. Now, the Roraima Institute, and I teach security and global institutions, asked me to do a brief on a Guyana geopolitical neighborhood. I went to Venezuela in November. I went to Colombia in December. I was going to go to Brazil and go to Suriname, but we have the problem with COVID. My friends, this is what's going to happen. If the PNC decides, as Mr. Harmon says, to go the route of restoring a political dictatorship in Guyana a la Borna, he is going to be faced with the geopolitical windfall that is existing now in Guyana for democracy. In Christopher Ram's program in March last year, Floyd and I did some listening interviews throughout the country. And most of the views I expressed in that program was based on our listening interview. I said, on behalf of those listening interviews, that the election would be in March this year. And I know that what they are trying to do, I don't understand how they intend to run the country without the IMF, without the World Bank, without the IDB, without the Inter-Caribbean Development Bank, without the United States, without Canada, without the European Union, God help me, without the entire Commonwealth. How these 25 blind mice are going to run the country? With what? With what they're going to run the country? And you know what's going to happen? They are so isolated inside Guyana that the entire population would be put on a footing of passive-aggressive. Nobody will cooperate. Productivity will go down. All kinds of things will happen. Oh boy. How can I get this person out? Oh Lord.
See the silent button.
I hope you all could hear. So I'm trying to get it off, but it wouldn't go off. It's consistent. Lord. Anyhow, so my position is that not to put the cart before the horse, we have to resolve this democratic issue now. Now, there might be another strategy, because I saw that President Granger came out 2 nights ago and said, oh, we are a friend of the United States. We work with the Southern Command. We work on COVID-19. We work on security. We work on a number of things, he said. So I don't know if he's putting out an olive branch to the United States. If that is the case, I think that it might be that a section of the PNC ruling group wants something, and they've been saying it. First is to squash the elections, which I thought was very, very insulting to Guyanese people. People campaign in an election, they went and vote, these poor people went and vote, and you're going to tell them squash the election? How could you do something like that? And then make Granger the president and make Dr. Ali some, I don't know what, when Dr. Ali won the elections. No, the point is that they might be doing this to get some international support for some kind of what they call shared governance. But I think they had 4 years. If they really believed in shared governance, they should have been doing that from the very first year they came to power. Instead of doing that, they raised all their salaries to enormous amount and created in the minds of people that they were not going to make a difference. So the point is that right now we have to get through this situation. The international community has, and the local community in Guyana have got to try and meet the political leadership of the PNC to see if they could dialogue with them and explain to them the dangers that they are putting Guyana in by going on a road, on a path for the restoration of a dictatorship a la Burnham. Guyana would be totally destroyed. What are they seeking? The destruction of their country? They're not going to benefit from that. You know, so we had a wonderful opportunity in 2015 when for the first time we had an election and we passed power from Mr. Hoyt to Mr. Jagan and then later to Janet Jagan and two other Mr. Jagdeo and then Ramuta. And then we moved to Mr. Hoyt. It looked...
Mr. Granger.
Yeah, Mr. Granger. Well, you know, I fought Hoyt, so it's a bit of memory. Anyhow, so Mr. Granger, that was a wonderful thing for democracy. It was a wonderful thing for democracy. I thought we are going to move forward. But Floyd and others in governance, I made this point. We have to recall and replace that constitution. We will never have ethical and transformational leadership unless we have a new constitution. People do not know, the younger generation. In 1978, we were supposed to have an election. Burnham and Shahabuddin created that constitution to give the powers of the devil to the president of the country and paramountcy of the party. And every other government that came did not make a serious attempt to recall and replace that constitution. There is no hope of addressing either democracy, racial equality, gender equality, unless we have a country. Look, there are 193 countries in the world. I teach civics. And I say to the student, there are squares in the world. A country gives you a birth certificate and they give you a passport. And every country has a constitution. You must have a framework within which you work.
Exactly right.
And therefore, I think that is priority number one. We in the Roraima Institute, Floyd has been working on the Sovereign Welfare Fund, on the Sovereign Wealth Fund. He has experience in business. He knows about finance. You know, he's traveled to over 100 countries in the world, attending to issues. And we have ideas for the Sovereign Wealth Fund, how everybody could benefit from it. I have ideas about democracy, about geopolitics, and how we could institutionalize an extraordinarily beneficial global relations with other nations that our country could benefit. And we have on our team experts on COVID-19. We have them experts on various areas. If you look at our website, roraima.org. And we're building a team. And other people like yourself should build teams. And we should put ideas and look for opportunities to influence whichever government is in power and the opposition also to help them so that they could move the country forward. But we need ethical and transformational leadership. We need a leadership that can demonstrate empathy, mercy, and embrace truth. If we don't do that, then Guyana would be lost because we have too many problems now. The problems have accumulated and accumulated since political independence, and now we have every problem before us. You will have to pull your hair to say which one do we prioritize. So we have to develop a framework in which we could get the people collectively to address these issues. And we have to do it from bottom up and from top bottom. It's not something that can be done top bottom.
Thank you, Paul. Floyd, you're a very successful businessman. Minority here in the US, all of us are minority, but being of African descent, you know, they have some bad vibe on that. But you have been very successful. If you're called upon, and I'm hoping that the new government, someone made a comment that you should be an advisor to any new government in Guyana, and I hope that the government takes that call. And I like what Paul says, that you guys working together and a platform to get things done. In a systematic way, what would you recommend a new government should do to start the process of healing our nation and at the same time creating a better economic opportunity for our citizens?
Well, I think Paul has got it exactly right. The very first thing we need is constitutional change. Listen, let's not kid ourselves. Unless that constitution is changed, we're not going anywhere. But the constitutional change will set up a framework wherein we can then unleash the power of the free market. Paul knows this, I'm a businessman. There are two things that every country or every expert will agree on that's necessary for development: the rule of law, which we seem not to have, and the free market, which we don't have in Guyana, but that's a separate discussion. But you need a system that would allow Guyana to use all of its potential. I often cite the example in sports, for example. When I was a young man growing up in Guyana, most of our cricketers lived in England and they played county cricket. But when we were involved in a Shell Shield match, we brought them back to Guyana. You look at countries all over the world, they do it for football. When Argentina goes to the World Cup, it brings back Messi, and so on and so forth. Why can't we take that same model for development? Meaning, why don't we bring back our diaspora talent? Not to come in and replace local talent, but to complement or supplement the local talent. So that's one thing we can do. We can utilize the expertise that resides in the diaspora. I have developed a framework for an economic advisory council that I presented to the leaders on both sides. And this is a team of business people, economists, accountants, financial people, technical people, engineering, to essentially create a national development strategy and manage the rollout and implementation of that strategy. So I've done that. I like the idea of a diaspora bond, which I also floated. And that is, there are Guyanese all over the world that would love to contribute and to give back and to go back. Well, you could sort of merge their willingness to give back with some sort of return in their giving back. By floating a diaspora, Israel does it. In fact, Israel is a very successful story with a diaspora bond. So it gives people a chance. Like you said, there's successful Guyanese all over the world. It gives them a chance to invest in the development of their country. But no country can develop with a portion of its human capital. And so let me close with this. Half of the population of Guyana resides outside of Guyana, meaning there are as many Guyanese in the diaspora as there are back home. Of the people back home, it's divided along racial lines. Okay? And so you're down to less than half of your human capital. You can never develop a country. You cannot take the field with less than half of your potential and hope to win the game. So all of these great ideas we have, we sit here in Washington and New York and these places, and we come up with strategies from up on high. You have to really get down on the ground. You have to engage the people, like we did with the listening interviews. Development really should be from the bottom up. You've got to. Guyana have what we call in business adaptive problems. They don't lend themselves to off-the-shelf solutions. They're not technical problems. You can't just plug. You can't, plug and play. And that's why when people ask me for direct solutions, I'm hesitant to give them. I really think, what I would do, and I'll really end on this note. If I were to advise any president tomorrow, I would say put together a group of people from various races, all sides, and have them walk around the country and meet the community. And out of that, come up with a plan to serve those communities. That's what first advice I would give them. And I would make sure that it has presidential authority to make sure something like that happens. You've got to talk to the people. They're a part of the solution. You can't solve it from the outside looking in.
And that is so well put. And, it reminds me of someone saying, if you want to know what is going on in the office, talk to the chairwoman.
That's exactly
because
right.
That person knows exactly who is doing what. And I like your call. The thing is, the fear in Guyana is that when Guyanese from the diaspora go home, they go to take the jobs are back home. And I think the fear in the Guyanese should not be there, because I think the Guyanese going back home should open up new frontiers, open up new industries.
Not cutting you, Charles. That is leadership. That's a leadership problem. The fear that what we call organ transplant, the fear that you bring diaspora people back and the folks at home are worried and concerned. And A proper leadership can manage that integration. It's leadership, my friend.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I hope the call is also for Guyanese to go back home, as you said, in other countries of the world, because we keep complaining, but we don't want to go and put our foot in the mud. Asha, Elvid George asked a question, and he said, do you think the last PPP administration helped the people? Maybe the East Indians, but not most of the blacks. That's a very legitimate concern for an African Guyanese.
I can only speak from my experiences. I went on a scholarship to study medicine. And when I looked on my left side, there were Afro-Guyanese. On my right side, there were Amerindians, and here am I, the Indian, standing. We had equal opportunities going forward. I have been saying throughout my campaign trail that both sides of the larger parties have failed the people in more ways than once. But regardless of what happened in the past, we need to respect the electoral decision and who the people voted for. We cannot disregard their decision or their choice because the government did wrong in the past. We need to move forward, and they speak of inclusive governance, and try to do the right thing now. I'm not going to speak for them. I'm not a member of the People's Progressive Party. But I have been saying that both the APNU-AFC, or PNC back then, and the PPPC have had flaws and failed in certain ways in the past. But looking forward, we need to find a working solution to fix things now. So let's not focus on the past.
Okay, good point. Paul, Dr. Rose asked, he said Guyanese come on Globespan and they talk about their ideas on how to develop Guyana, but they do not put forth any. Please ask your guests to outline their ideas so that everyone can benefit. To talk and not explain is a waste of time. It's impossible for us to explain in detail what a plan is. And Floyd, I really want to challenge you tonight is that you and Paul put together a team of brainstorming here in New York. We can have, I'm sure, the other parts of the world. We need to put together a plan of action, and there's a lot of brilliant ideas here in New York. I know many guys here in New York who have great plans. So we can meet, discuss it, put it together, and present to the government a workable solution. And hopefully they will look at it, and then together we can all be part of the development of Guyana. Paul, what do you think?
Well, of course, inclusivity includes, and I want to say this, I want to see the poor people included first.
Yes.
I don't want to see the middle class continue dominating and hegemonizing. I tell you, I'm a grassroots guy. And one of my main criteria about Guyana is I want an indicator that tells me how many people coming out of poverty, how many people get jobs, how many people doing this, how many people getting educated. Now, you come to me with those indicators from the grassroots. You could call them grassroots indicators for the human development. Call it that, and I am supporting you 100%. Now, Dr. Rose is okay saying that. This is not writing a PhD thesis. I could write a lot of theses. Dr. Rose does not know about what I have written, but throughout the 80s, I put forward ideas. They are documented in black and white about the transformation of Guyana, the Constitution, the health, every area I've touched, infrastructure, foreign policy. I had an idea for the educational system that we should reorient it totally. We have been training people with a lot of money. We are educating them to search for jobs. And only the government have jobs. So there are no jobs. So what do? We migrate. So we have the highest on a per capita basis of tertiary educated people having migrated. So the working people work very hard day and night, and they produce money to educate these people that cost a lot of money, and they leave. But the people do not leave because they want to leave. They leave because there are no jobs. So why don't we think the opposite? We teach people to create jobs, not to search for jobs. And I had worked out that for the first 2 years, you have a general educator both social science and STEM. When you got to the third year, you begin to identify a project that you are interested in. And you could be a biologist, and it could be a project to create jobs. You could be a historian, and it could be a project to create jobs. And then you being supervised by a professor or an external advisor. And in the fourth year, you begin to put your project together, and the government assists you to identify international agencies that would be willing to help you financially. So listen, 100 people graduate, you give them a degree in one hand, and you give them a check in the other hand. Go in the real world, create a job. Now, the way capitalism works, 85% will fail. But you know that 15% that would succeed would employ almost all of the Guyanese people. It is small business all throughout Europe, throughout the history of capitalism, even here in America, all across, with 10 employees, 15 employees, and 20 employees that keep an economy going. And you have a lot of bankruptcies in America. Even the president of America went bankrupt a couple of times, right? But out of bankruptcy, you learn and you go forward. People, that's another attitude of us institutionalizing a sense of failure in the minds of our people. We have to teach them that from failure, you can learn to remake yourself and refashion yourself. I did labor. I was a trade consultant. I'm a professor. Led a struggle in Guyana for free and fair elections. Each time, right now, I'm teaching online. I never taught online before. I just finished a graduate course 2 nights ago, teaching online. Last semester, I taught 3 courses online. Jesus Christ. I went to do a course, and now, and look, I'm a baby boomer. I am remaking myself. So we need to rethink the education system in Guyana. For example, I grew up in many parts of Guyana, Bartica, Regent Street. Floyd likes this. He call it my street speech. Up Sandy Bob Street, Rob Street, Regent Street, Kilmarnock, Ulverston, Alness, all about, Wismar. Now, tell me something. How much do I know about the environment in which I live? If I do not know, if you educate me in a school, whether it's a high school or a primary school or kindergarten, and I don't know what resources exist in this area, let's say the quarantine, how in the name of God am I going to get creative ideas to transform it into jobs and services and to become economically viable? I did English history on the colonial times, the Tudors and the Stuarts. How am I going to, you know, I had to learn Guyanese history on my own. So we need to rethink the education system, as we need to rethink the health system, to rethink, as I said, what has happened since political independence. All the problems have accumulated. Now they're right before us. Whoever gets the government now is going to be faced of prioritizing and working at various fronts at the same time. And that's why you cannot do it with 1 leader or 2 leaders. You're going to have teams. That's what Floyd is speaking about.
Yeah, well said.
Transformation with teams. Brother, I teach, and I teach informally by teams. I have about 3 or 4 people. I bring people from the IMF to lecture in my class, from the World Bank. I bring diplomats to come, State Department. I bring people from the outside. Floyd will tell you, I hold a cultural public citizen diplomacy project every semester. We have about 25 diplomats. They come from State Department, they come from the OAS, they come from all about. I don't have the money to have a team, but I go out and make friends and network and access these people resources. We could do the same thing in Guyana. We could do the same thing in Guyana. So I would say to Dr. Rose, send him some information, and I could give him some information on I have thought out every single thing in Guyana. Because you have to do that. You have to do that if you're running for elections.
Thank you, Paul.
Everything.
Wilbert, yeah, thank you, Paul. Wilbert asked a very important question. It's on your screen. It says, the core issue is race hatred in the hearts and minds of Guyanese. Eradicating this race hate is where the focus should be. All else is treating the symptoms and not the disease itself. Floyd, people like what the 3 of you are saying, in that the broad-based community involvement is important for any development. And I like the idea you said, the presidential authority, a team going across Guyana, listening to every community, what their fears are, what their needs are, what they like to see happening. And I think out of that, we can produce a beautiful project document. And if Dr. Ali becomes the president, he is a project management guy. He actually got his PhD in project management. So the thing is, he understands that. And I hope that this catch on, and in the next 5 to 10 years, that this racist problem that we are encountering now will subside so low that it will be immaterial. Because everyone, whatever your ethnic group is, whatever your preference is, you will be part of the solution. So in moving forward, I really think the audience is really liking what you guys are saying. Our viewers like exactly what you're saying, and it's right on. Asha, I know we're coming up to closing time eventually, and good discussion always have to end. What would you, I know I asked this question before, and I really want to ask you again. Would you be part of that, or will you be available to be a part of that team that go across the country if you are called upon to listen to the ideas and the fears and the concerns of our citizens, and then together be part of that project document that you write up, and hopefully all future government will follow that?
There's no question about it. And as a young woman sitting before you tonight, I like to point out the two things that I've been observing. Look at New Zealand with their female prime minister candidate. Well, candidate right now, or their prime minister, let me say. And at Mia Motley. They had a very good analysis of what's happening in their country. So when the cases of COVID hit them and they were faced with disaster, they knew exactly where the vulnerable communities were, who were the people that needed help immediately, how to help the people, their chronic disease patients they could have taken care of. And I sat down and I listened to both of them speaking and looked at their strategies. And it comes about to the same thing you guys are saying right now, that we need to get out there in the community. We need to do an analysis, and we need to have papers published on it. Sadly, Guyana, right now, I've seen a failure because they're asking people to come forward and fill out documents online to get help. Not everybody has a computer. Not everybody has internet. So the people are still left in the dark. The people are still not getting the help. And answering the question, definitely, I'm already part of the team in Guyana. And I will be more than happy to be part of the international team, the diaspora. And wherever I can lend a helping hand, I'm always there.
Lovely,
Charles, let me just add.
Yes, Floyd.
Yeah, we ought to, in response to Dr. Rose, we ought to be very careful when we sit over here and offer solutions to Guyana. Again, there's a danger in that. Leadership is about getting people to solve their problems. And it's not about handing solutions to them from upon high. It's a big, big mistake we make. I mean, I sit back and I watch these programs and I listen to people. They've already solved the Guyana problem. And I said, how in the world could you know that? How could you know that? Who is that bright to have sit in their living room and come up with a solution for Guyana? I am not that arrogant. What I would do, I would get on the ground and I would listen. Because invariably in solving people's problems, you're going to have to change attitudes, values, belief systems. And you can only change that if you listen to those people and understand what they're thinking and what their problems are. And so I don't fall victim to just rattling off a list of solutions. That's just not the way leadership works. You've got to get on the ground, and the people themselves have to be part of the solution. What happens if you try to impose a solution? It typically doesn't work, and then you get run out of town. And one last thing I'll say to your other comment. Guyana has a major race problem, but it manifests itself in the dispensation and in the application of power. It is that race has a power dimension to it, so that Indians and blacks hang out, they date each other, marry each other, celebrate each other holidays and those type of things. I'm not trivializing the race problem, But I'm saying where the rubber meets the road, it's in the use of state power, in the allocation of resources, the distribution of contracts, those types of things. That is where it has to be arrested.
Beautifully put.
Can I say
Yes,
quickly?
Asha.
I love what he mentioned about being there with the people every day and speaking to them. That's my daily life.
Yeah.
Every day I'm with the people. Every weekend I volunteer my time to be in the communities, helping wherever I can, medically, economically, wherever I can put my hands. So to know what is happening with the people of Guyana, I can say I have a good idea of that. And that's why I'm so passionate about what I'm doing.
All right. When we come back, Paul, when we come back, we will wrap up. Paul,
just a quick point.
No, I'm going to come back. Can you hold that for a minute? When we come back, you'll raise a point.
Okay.
We'll have a break and then we come back.
Okay.
Domestic USA Rail Vacation Getaways now available with Travelspan. Packages leaving from New York City to Niagara Falls, Boston, Cape Cod, Washington, D.C., or New Orleans. All packages include round-trip rail tickets, hotel accommodations, sightseeing, and more. For information, call Travelspan at 718-845-0437. That's Travelspan, 718-845-0437.
January marks 1 year since Globespan 24/7 embarked on this initiative to offer a platform that brings in all sides, all points of view, and all concerns. Viewers in Guyana and across the world are participating in discussions that are bringing to light issues relating to social, economic, and political matters that have been plaguing our nation. Globespan's platform offers Guyanese to express their concerns and discuss solutions in the political realm, thereby addressing the polarized situation. Discussions also include social ills, such as alcoholism, domestic violence, and suicides that have been plaguing the people. The platform also mitigates the brain drain by having speakers that live in Guyana and across the world participate in these discussions. This concept will avail a broader view for the benefit of all Guyanese, so Globespan needs your support to offset the expenses. Kindly contribute by clicking the link in the description to help support these programs.
Okay, welcome back to Globespan 24/7. We have a very interesting program tonight, and I know time is running out on us, but I was talking to Paul. I cut him off. Paul, you want to start your discussion? You're talking about?
I wanted to follow up on what Asha and Floyd said by giving an example. I'm a guy like to give example. I had a very good friend in Venezuela, President Caldera. He was the leader of the Christian Democratic Party. And, you know, I had a chat with him, with my youth and so on, tell him how the people in Petare and the poor people and this and that, what they need. He said, Paul, I went up there and I asked the people what they want. And you know what they told me? They want a telephone up in the slums. You know why? They have to walk down 2-3 miles to go and make a phone call, to get a job, to do something, do something done. You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
And Dr. Jagan and I, at one point in the PCD, he and I had a lot of chats. And one day I tell him, I said, Doc, you and I can't live up Guyana. I have been living in that grassroots because you once told me, said, Paul, you bring back the word grassroots to the politics. I said, I sleep in that grassroots. You know what people want, Doc? They want protection of their life, their family, and their property. They don't want when they get a pig and they have 9 piglets in the belly of the pig the night before, somebody come and thief the pig and gone. They don't want all night to be in black bush and all night they have to wake up to watch the thief man don't go and thief the things. I said, people in Guyana, if we give them security and protection, they are going to develop. One last point aches my heart. I see a lot of young people every day being caught as criminals, beaten up by police and this and that. What are we doing about these young people? If I were the Minister of Public Security, I would have gotten all those young people. I would have bring their parents together in one room, and I would have tried to find out why is it these young people have to resort to crime? Do they have an education? Do they have a job? What can we do for them? That is what we have to do, bro. We have to take care of our people. We have to have empathy for them. We have to have mercy for them. We have to remember we came from indentureship conquest and slavery. We didn't come from kings and queens. And we cannot walk around Georgetown and see people begging and children begging. Each community must take care of their hungry people, but we got to provide them with resources. We got to help them. You got to give them leadership. This thing requires a whole new rethinking about leadership. We call it ethical and transformation.
Thank you very much, Paul.
You know, but none of us could sit down and write the Communist Manifesto for the World Revolution from some university or something, bro. This is real story we're talking about. You got to go in the grassroots. It's why you want to develop Guyana, so those people will benefit.
Thank you very much, Paul. I think what you guys
had a leader in Latin America, Emilio Maspero. He had a wonderful. Only the people can save the people. Only the people can save them. Solo el pueblo salva el pueblo. And he had another philosophy that guides me. Those who have more should pay more. Those who have less should pay less. And for those who do not have, we must outstretch a hand of solidarity to them.
Amen.
That's it.
All right. What I like about this discussion tonight, Asha and Paul and Floyd, is that you have really brought out the truth that we need to have been hearing. We cannot be sitting outside of Guyana and make decisions on the solutions for Guyana. You're so correct. I think the people in Guyana are also fed up of that, hearing that, oh, we have all this solution to the problem. I really believe that, and I think you guys have put it so beautifully tonight, that unless we go to the communities, listen to their concerns, listen to their needs, and out of that concern, out of that need, the government can now create a plan, a path of action that can actually satisfy those needs. Asha, in closing, do you want to say anything else to our viewers?
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, gratitude for having me here again. Tonight, in my closing remarks, I'd like to make a direct call to the incumbent Brigadier David Granger. The power is in his hands to put a stop to what is happening right now. He has the ability to concede and let the country move forward. My call to him is to let good sense prevail. I also make a call to Justice Claudette Retired Singh that let good sense prevail on her part. The nation is in quagmire. We're not moving forward. We're stuck economically. We're stuck in the health sector. We need a government in place. I urge them to do the right thing. The recount has shown clearly who has won this 2020 elections. Democracy must be preserved. We must have respect for that decision and for the people of Guyana.
Thank you, Dr. Kissoon. It's always a pleasure. And that's why I see the reason why the new movement selected you to be their president candidate. You have spoken very well. And I think you have the people of Guyana embodied in your thinking and in your ways. So thank you so much. And we look forward to many years of service for you, the people of Guyana. Floyd, anything in closing? Floyd?
Like what has happened? He got cut? Floyd?
I think we lost Floyd. Floyd, are you there?
I'm here, yes, I'm here.
Oh yeah, anything in closing?
Yes, if Guyana is to be a great nation, it cannot be so structured on dishonesty, deceit. It has to be built in truth, honesty, and integrity. Let the will of the people prevail.
Thank you. Words of wisdom. Paul,
I'd like
in closing
to endorse what both guests have said. And I also would like to appeal to the leadership of the ruling party there that they do not take Guyana back to a political dictatorship. And in doing that, I'd like to leave them with a poem written by Kamta Karan in the hard days when we fought the dictatorship. It's called Walkman. Walkman, walkie walk, till he hand and foot broke. Walkman, walkie walk, till he carved duck. Walkman, wait, he wait, cause he poor faith. Walkman, wait, wait. Now he life disintegrate. The time is right. Walkman, must unite. The time is ripe, ripe to organize the fight. Workman, dictator, dictator, workman in confrontation. Workman, more workman, you've got to free up this land. Remember, good life not gonna come till dictatorship gone. Stop work, workman. Plan, workman. Stop work and plan. You got to free up this land by come to Quran. Now, what I want to say to the PNC leadership, we don't want to go back there. We already been there. A whole generation, you know, they didn't allow me to teach at the university, but 4 other universities allowed me to teach. They're crazy. So we have to change Guyana, and the leadership is the obstacle to development. So I appeal to them as patriots that they should try and do the right thing. Gandhi said, justice is truth in action. Floyd and Asha have spoken about truth. Now, this document by this gentleman, Mr. Lowenfield, is not truth. This is a fiction. This is fake. This is the work of Mandrake. Guyana's Mandrake. They're going to have a new order given to him called the Mandrake Order, a national award, Mandrake Order. So that's where I close. Workman will have to go back and walk like dictatorship. Right?
Thank you, Paul. Actually, Kamta Karan taught me in school, in high school. He was such a great guy.
Yeah.
His soul rest in peace. I think he passed away a couple of years ago.
You know, he came to us a day. You know what he said? I want to go in the grassroots and organize. We said,
yeah,
what?
Yeah, he was.
You know what he
was
said?
a person, yes.
He said, give me a bag of rice and a bag of flour. He took the bag of rice and bag of flour, and every week he bugged me. I got a bottom house meeting organized. I got the bottom house. He go and live with somebody, and he giving them the rice and the flour, and he get them to help organize the bottom house.
That was the guy, Kamta Karan. That is so true. So again, Asha and Floyd and Paul, it's such a pleasure having you on our program tonight. And we look forward as the call from all of us here that hopefully the CCJ will hear all the hearings on Wednesday. And hopefully by Friday, they will make a decision. And when a decision is made, that the chairman of the commission announce the winner of this March 2nd general and regional elections. And hopefully when we come back next Monday, we will have a new president installed in our country. To our viewers out there, we want to thank you so much for being with us, to Nohar Singh for making this platform available, to Devin for doing such a great job in having this broadcast live to all our viewers. So again, to you, ladies and gentlemen, to all our viewers, and to all of Guyana, may God bless our country, and may God bless you all. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.